week 3 of the meditation challenge. So I hope you're managing to meditate every day and come to the centre at least once a week. It's really great to see so many of you again. Who have been here for the last 2? Let's have a little bit of a show of hands. Okay, reasonable smattering. Good. So what I've been doing for the last 2 weeks is exploring really the stages of a well-lived life. That's really what Buddhism is concerned with. It's very simply, how do you make the most of life? Given the fact that life ends, and given the fact that you don't know when life ends, which are the great matters in human life, how do you make the most of it? How do you live the most fulfilling life? And teaching this session has been very, for me, shadowed by my mother's death. She died at the end of last year, and I only had the funeral last Friday. So I've been looking at the Buddhist tradition again, very much from the point of view of death and loss. So on the first week I was talking about the first great stage of human life that's developed, that's going to grow, and that is the stage that Sangharakshita, the founder of this movement, calls integration. You could call it non-fragmentedness, but I was particularly emphasizing we need to, in the shadow of death, so to speak, which our whole life, that shadow casts a great shadow across our life, both darkening it but also giving it meaning and significance. In the shadow of that great matter, the important thing is to own your own life, isn't it? To protect your mind and own your own life. If you don't own your own life, your life will be run by other people, and the media is now more and more able to get into your mind and sell you things and get you to do things. So you need to own your own life. That's never probably been more difficult, because there are more and more forces that are trying to own your life for benefit, for their own benefit. So you need to become a sovereign individual, as I said in week 1, not in the sense of this sort of license to express oneself irrespective of other people, but really living out from value. And that all gets captured in this word of integration. Owning your mind, owning your life, taking ownership of your agency, which is very, very difficult to do. And I'll be teaching a course based on my book, this book, Life in Full Attention, that I wrote a while ago, and people on the course will get that book. We'll be doing an 8-week course, particularly exploring mindfulness, which is a great path to integration, to ownership, self-ownership, from this February the 15th. So as this is week 3 of the challenge, you need to already be thinking, okay, what am I going to do next? Because it's not a question of just meditating for 4 weeks. That won't do very much. I've meditated for 35 years or something like that. So it's more like that, yeah? But anyway, 8 weeks would be 8 weeks would be another step, wouldn't it? So that starts on the 15th. Of course, the other thing you could do to just carry on is just keep coming on Saturday morning. Sometimes you get into the routine of coming at a particular time at a particular day. Just keep coming, so the classes just will carry on. Yeah. So that was the first stage. Then, on the basis of owning your life, on the basis of owning your agency, not just being the puppet of the media, not just reiterating old prejudices and worn-out doctrines, but living from your own capacity for value, and that involves facing up to yourself, facing who you are in your strengths as well as your weaknesses. You need to be able to admit your weaknesses and apologize for them and work on them, and you need to be able to rejoice in your strengths. All of that is really integration. It's a great matter. But on the basis of that, especially on the basis of knowing yourself, you can then make a contribution to the world. That's what I was talking about last week. Sangharakshita calls this the stage of positive emotion or positive action. So on the basis of a non-fragmented awareness, on the basis of really knowing and owning your life, you can then give, you can then create a world around you that you want. You can, particularly you can give and you can love. And most of your attention, as you practice a genuine life, a valuable life, needs to be on cultivating the good. If only, if nothing else, for the fact that without doing that, your mind will be unprotected. So I was saying last week that our minds have evolved evolutionarily to be wired for threat. So human beings are extremely sensitive to threat, and many of those threats are social threats, perceived social threats. And if you're not careful, if you don't own your mind in integration and then develop your mind in positive emotion, you'll be drawn back again and again to threat. Because threat shows up for you very much. The only way to protect yourself from that, because if you get drawn back to threat, you'll be drawn back to resentments, to indignation, to feeling sorry for yourself. You'll be drawn back to issues of blame and recrimination, all of which will vitiate your life, will make you less of a person. It's very, very easy to do. I've been noticing since the funeral, particularly, my mood has gone, it's sort of lower, quite low at times. And that's understandable. But also I have a habit to low mood anyway, and if I'm not careful, that starts to ride on, difficult events. But then something in me starts to ride onto that, yeah. And the only protection from that is to keep on turning one's mind towards the good and the valuable and the meaningful and the generous and the loving. Now, you can't even really do that if you're not integrated, because your idea of the good and the valuable and the wise and the meaningful will be fragmented, will be either ideological or one-sidedly theoretical. You need to first of all own yourself, yeah. But that's what I was talking about last week, is then on the basis of knowing yourself, protecting your mind by ongoingly, moment to moment, day by day, fostering the good. And the practice that most exemplifies that is the Maitreyabandhu practice, which we touched on last week. I mean, we're only touching on meditation. It's called a meditation masterclass, but you could be wondering where the meditation is. But anyway, I'm trying to sort of set you up on the whole path. So today we're going to go beyond that, and I'll talk about that probably after the tea break. But let's first of all now actually do some meditation and recapitulate, at least in brief, those two stages. So if you're sitting on the floor, you really need your knees on the floor. If you're new to meditation, we haven't been able to teach you anything about posture, so that's that's a shame really. So I would suggest you sit astride the cushions with your knees on the floor. Unless you do yoga and you've got very flexible hips, don't sit in a cross-legged posture, because usually you can't manage it. Okay, so those of you in the reception room, if you can get yourself comfortable as well. So when you're ready, closing your eyes. As soon as you close your eyes, you enter into this in-space, which may be infinite. So opening up to this sense of interiority. And the simplest place to start, best place to start, is your body. Your mind can be all over the place, but your body is right here all the time. So really noticing the weight of your body on the chair or the cushions. And the sense of your weight isn't an idea, it's not a thought, not an image. It's just a feeling of pressure. It's the support of the chair or the cushions. And that support has a sort of reassuring feeling. You can rely on it. And then feeling your feet on the floor. Perhaps it's best to think in terms of the energy of your feet, so that you don't try to picture your feet, an idea of feet. Even when we try to become aware of our body, we're very often just stuck in thought. And then softening your face. See if you can soften your brow. All the small muscles around your eyes. And bringing your attention into your shoulders. We're often gripping our shoulders without noticing it. We do it automatically and habitually. So see if you can sense if you're gripping in your shoulders. To see if you can let them go. So you're really feeling the sensations in your shoulders. And even if some of those sensations are uncomfortable, see if you can allow yourself to feel them without reacting to discomfort in your mind, which will just make the discomfort worse. And you can just imagine your shoulders releasing. It's like you're taking off a very tight jacket. And the shoulders can just drop down the back. Chest can open up. And then taking your attention into your belly. And can you once again imagine your belly softening? So you don't need to grip onto your belly now. There's nothing stressing you now. And again, if your belly is uncomfortable, see if you can even welcome that discomfort. Otherwise, your mind will perceive it as a threat, and that will make matters worse. Just keeping your attention in your belly. And you can just imagine the breath breathing through any gripping, any holding, any soreness. And then noticing your thighs. See if you can let go of any gripping in your thighs. So your whole body is calming down. Your whole body is quietening down. So you can feel your weight on the cushions, on the chair. You just have this sort of sense that as you're sitting here, your whole body, your whole system, your psychophysical system is all calming down, smoothing out. And then see if you can feel your breath in the body. And your breath is just like this winter wind blowing through the trees outside. You can sit completely still, and you can just let the breath blow through you. And then tuning in to the sounds around you, the sounds in the room and the sounds outside on the Roman road. then when you're ready, opening your eyes. Coming out of the meditation and sitting out of your meditation posture. So I'll just say one or two more things, then we'll do another brief meditation, and then, as usual, we'll have the challenge of trying to have a cup of tea, which so far has been going quite well. Okay, so as hopefully by now I've made abundantly clear, the great matter of life, when you look at life from the point of view of death, is how to live a truly human life. It really should be our greatest concern, is how to live a truly human life. If we're not careful, we get that concern is siphoned off into how to be beautiful, which at my age is anyway, or how to be rich, or how to be popular, or how to be powerful and influential, and so on. So it's very easy for the great question to just be dissipated in secondary matters. I think nowadays it's never been as easy to waste time. I'm still slightly appalled by my phone behaviour. It's very, very easy, isn't it, like never before, to waste time. I'm finding even the activity of trying to read a book more of a challenge, because there's so many easier things to do that just involve your thumb. So it's very easy to just waste time, and time is all you've got. It's a terrible shame to waste it. It's very easy, isn't it, to not really give your attention to things, to be talking to somebody and half looking at somebody two tables down that you fancy, or to be listening to music but doing something else at the same time. These are great challenges for us now. How do I live a truly human life? How do I make the best of it? Because it ends, and seeing my poor mother, in her late 80s, what you see is a world more and more restricted. Eventually it was restricted to her bed, of course. I better go there. But if your life just restricts, your body lets you down. The one thing you can hope to have as you grow older is dignity, and that gets taken off you as well. So the matter is urgent. The Buddha said that our human life is we're like children in a burning house. We're playing our games. Is a very traditional thing from an ancient sutra. He said that we're like children playing in a burning house, and we're just playing all these games, and the house is haunted, the house is on fire, the house has got rats everywhere, but we're just children playing our games of status, playing our games of career, playing our games of influence, and so on. Meanwhile, the house is burning. And interestingly, in that great sort of myth, the Buddha himself appears like the father outside the house, calling to the children. And it's interesting, in the sutra, it's an ancient sutra, the White Lotus Sutra. In the sutra, the children occasionally notice the call. And I think that's exquisitely accurate for our human life. We're in a burning house. We're playing games, of all kinds of games, from feel sorry for me games to I'm too sexy for my shirt games, etc., etc. They preoccupy us in a way that retrospectively is staggering, really. But we do occasionally hear the call of something beyond that, don't we? All of us do. The reason you're here is because you've heard the call of something beyond that. So then the Buddha's saying, okay, so that's our situation. So the first thing you need to do is wake up to yourself. You need to become embodied. You need to realise that you're just caught up in this game that is taking you away from yourself. You need to take ownership of yourself, in integration. Then he's saying you need to start to clear up the house. You need to start to put some of the fires out at least. You need to start to cooperate with the children that you're playing with instead of competing with them, or at least compete cooperatively. You need to, in other words, you need to contribute to your life and to the lives of those around you. And all of those is this great matter of living a truly human life. Yeah? But there's something beyond all that. So integration and positive emotion, or non-fragmentation, or self-ownership, self-responsibility, individuality, followed by making the largest contribution to your life and those around you, which is what makes life valuable and meaningful. In the Buddhist vision of life, that's still not preliminary, because they're great matters in themselves, but there's much, much further. One of the things that Buddhism is trying to tell the world, and has been trying to tell the world for 2,500 years now, a bit more than that, is that there is much more to being human than you think. That we have a glass ceiling, and that glass ceiling is far too low. The tragedy of our lives is how small we keep ourselves, really. The Buddhist vision is that humanity, what to be truly human is, stretches all the way up to Buddhahood itself. It's a remarkably, unbelievably optimistic vision of the human being. It's very realistic about the burning house, and it's very realistic about our stupidity. The Buddha said that most people are prothogenas, which means ordinary stupid people. Prothogenas, there you are, you can say that at a party. You're just a prothogena. Try a bit of Pali. But it just means, it means sort of, perhaps stupid is too sharp a translation. It could mean you're just ordinary, immature people. You're just children. And you need to grow up. And the whole Buddhist vision is a vision of growing up. But the vision of growing up goes far, far beyond our usual idea of ourselves. So the Buddha is not another Socrates. He's not like Plato. He's not God. He is the truly human at its most profound. Yeah? So what we're going to do is we'll just do a little bit of cultivating positive emotion now. And then after the tea break, I want to say something about this next stage of the call, because the next 2 weeks are really to do with the Buddha's call. We're children in a burning house, and we're being called, and you must have felt that to some degree, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So this week and next week we'll be exploring that, but this week particularly we're going to explore spiritual death. Yeah. But before we do that, because we need to always do that on the basis of love, of generosity, of warmth. Let's just do a little bit of that before we have a cup of tea. So once again, closing your eye. And as soon as you closed your eyes again, opening up to the body sense. Our fragmented mind sense means that we're very often not very aware of our body. So bringing your attention into the weight of your body on the chair or the cushions. Opening up to your body sensations, whether you like your body sensations or not. They're your life happening to you just now. Just see if you can have a sense of soothing the body, calming the body, smoothing out any gripping, any holding, any tightening. And you can just imagine that your mind can do that. If you imagine it, it'll start to happen. Calming the mind. Calming the body. This is opening up the body, and that's how we integrate ourselves, or how we start to. And then we need to open up our heart. So just see if you can stay in touch with the body, and the weight of your body just now on the chair or the cushions. And just without making too big a deal of it, just bring to mind something in your life that's moved you. It doesn't need to be a great big emotion, just a time that you felt moved by, touched by, attracted to. It can be anything you want, the smallest thing. See if you can just tune into a memory of when you felt moved, when you felt a little bit opened up. See if you can sort of have that memory live again in your experience. Just go through it. What did you see? What were you saying? How did it feel like in your body? And then again coming back to the weight of your body on the chair or the cushions. If we're going to approach the great mysteries of life, we need to do it open to the body and with an open heart. Once again, when you're ready, opening your eyes. Yeah, so I want to then try and say something about this next great stage of, what we're calling a truly human life. And as I said, the problem with that idea even is that we think we know what human is. Buddhism says, no, that's much too small. Yeah, much too small. So if those of you who were here last week, I was saying slightly rudely that because I'm an extroverted thinker, so if I think things, it's right out of my mouth. I wouldn't recommend it, but there you go. Gets me into all kinds of trouble, as you can imagine. But I was saying that the idea that when you die, that's the end of consciousness, I was saying I thought that's a stupid idea. There was a slight in the room last week, but I think it is a stupid idea, but I thought I said that a bit nicer than last week. I thought I'll try and say a little bit more about why it's a stupid idea and how that connects with spiritual death. Yeah? So the idea that most of us have, that we don't realise is an idea, it's actually a belief that we don't realise is a belief, just like the Victorians believed in God, but they didn't think of it as a belief, they just thought it was a fact. That it was a self-evident fact that God created the world, that look at the world around you, it's the handiwork of God. They didn't think that they were believing in something that was to do with views and theories, they just thought that was the case. We have exactly the same belief about death, that when you die, that's the end. It's not because we've read philosophy books, it's not because we know about brain science usually, because if we did, we wouldn't be so sure. We've just picked up this meme that when you die, that's the end of consciousness. That consciousness is, to talk technically, an epiphenomena of the brain. That what you've got basically, and again, these aren't beliefs that we've ever studied, we've probably never read a word about this, and yet millions and billions of people have got this view that matter is pretty much all there is, and that somehow when matter gets complicated enough in the brain, especially in the brains of primates and human beings, the greater the level of complexity, neural complexity and chemical complexity, somehow consciousness arises out of that. That's what is meant by an epiphenomenon of the brain. Yeah? So that consciousness arises from matter. Yeah? And that's become our deep assumption which is actually, as I say, an unsecured belief, just like belief in God is an unsecured belief, but it's disguised as a fact, and people will even be absurdly confident about that. One of the things I found difficult around the approach to my mother's death is my brother's confidence that they knew what was happening, which, that this was going to be the end, and I just found it stupid, and boorish. They don't mean to be stupid and boorish, but it's it's just the view that that view shapes us. It shapes our attitude to life. It shapes our attitude to death. Shapes our attitude to grieving. It's a brick wall that destroys us at death, and our society is badly damaged by that view. But that is one possibility. So let's not be too rude about it. It is possible that consciousness is an epiphenomena of the brain. It's very, very problematic, but it's possible. It's not very possible, actually, but it is possible. So that's one of three possibilities about consciousness, and then we will get to spiritual death. So the first possibility of consciousness is an epiphenomena of the brain, that somehow, in a way that nobody understands, literally nobody understands, scientists, philosophers, no one understands. It's a hard problem. Somehow matter creates consciousness. You can see how neurons fire, you can do all sorts of things like that, but nobody knows how I open my eyes now into this world of consciousness. It's completely unknown. Whether you're a neurophysicist or whatever, you don't know, and I don't know. But it's perhaps somehow that's what happens. If that is what happens, it's basically saying that consciousness is a miracle, because there's nothing about matter that is remotely like consciousness. If you see a dissection of the brain, I used to be a nurse, so I used to support operations and so on. Matter is just stuff. You can slice a brain in half. There's no spaces in it. There's nothing remotely like this. When it's just stuff, and there's nothing of consciousness in it. So you'd have to somehow deal with the problem that how can something completely unlike consciousness arise out of matter? It's a bit like saying you would get, that rhubarb would grow and grow and grow and then give rise to algebra. How's that going to work? You do the growing bit, the stem, big leafy thing, then algebra. That was weird. So if rhubarb could come up with algebra, that would basically be a miracle. A miracle. Now the problem of that idea is it's increasingly under stress for new understanding. So for instance, if you take LSD, none of us have done that. Not me, anyway. What LSD does is it closes down your brain. Effectively, it makes it less complex, and you have much greater experiences. So the idea that neural complexity and chemical complexity eventually gets so weirdly developed that pop, algebra pops out of it, is problematized by there's increasing experiments in LSD because it was banned for a long time, and now they're using it for all sorts of things. But it closes down the brain. The other thing that I've been exploring a little bit in my own way is near-death experiences. We've interviewed Eben Alexander, who's had the most profound near-death experiences anyone's had on record. He was in a coma for, I think, 8 days. He went down from 10% likelihood of surviving to 2% likelihood of surviving, and even then with the assumption that he'd never ever walk again or talk again. So he's now giving talks about his near-death experiences. Again, you get this experience of the brain almost entirely closing down. Somebody was saying they're actually basically death experiences, because the brain is pretty much closed down entirely in very deep coma, and yet people come back with remarkable experiences which almost look like the kind of experiences that happened thousands and thousands of years ago, and people created the idea of heaven from. They're very like modern visions of heaven, and they seem to be cultured. So if you If you come from a Buddhist culture, you meet Amitabha, who takes you into the Amitabha's Pure Land. If you come from Christian culture, actually weirdly, you never seem to meet Jesus, but you meet your family and you see a white light and so on. Of course, there are possibilities that near-death we don't know about near-death experiences either, and there's still a lot of research to do into it. But those two things, at the very least, problematise that idea that consciousness is an phenomena of the brain. So the second possibility then is that the brain transmits consciousness. Yeah? That the brain is a bit like a radio or a television set or a computer. So you know that you can break the television, you can break the computer, but no one thinks that whatever Netflix doesn't work anymore. No one thinks you can't watch The Crown anymore. You just can't watch it on your television because it's broken. Yeah. So it's possible that the brain transmits consciousness. The other possibility, and this is a possibility particularly talked about by Ian McGilchrist, who I do recommend Jan of Archer and we interviewed him here in the main shrine room. I think he's the major thinker that I'm aware of at the moment, a remarkable thinker. We interviewed him about all of this because we've struck a bit of a conversation with him. And he says that this third possibility is the most likely, given all the... And that's not because he wants it to be, but unlike me, he's done all the research in his book, The Matter with Things, which is like that thick. And I have read the second volume. I think there's something like 5,000 notes at the end of all the research that it's referring to. So everything goes back to the research. So he says that he thinks that the most likely possibility is not that the brain creates consciousness, it's not that the brain transmits consciousness, but that the brain permits consciousness. Which is very, very, for me, a very exciting idea because it's very deeply like what Buddhism is saying. The brain is like a limiter valve. It can be more or less open or closed to consciousness. Yeah? You can close consciousness right the way down, and you can open it right the way up. Yeah? But it's not to do with neuroplasticity, it's not to do with the complication of neurofibers and so on. So that the possibility is that the brain is like a, as I say, like a valve that allows more or less consciousness to come through. Yeah? Increasingly, that's my own belief. And it's very deeply, it's a different language, but it's basically what Buddhism is saying. So that means, do you see how what that comes to mean? It poses this problem about what on ever do we mean by consciousness then? Because we tend to think of consciousness as being mine, generated by me. It's a problematic word as well because consciousness suggests that it's conscious. And even in our everyday life, most of our activities aren't conscious in that sense. Even making breakfast, you don't do it consciously. You don't think, where is the cereal? Oh yes, up the, you just do it all with your hands and you can get the spoon without thinking about it. So it's not conscious. But it's something that seems to, as it were, flow through us, and we can permit more of it or less of it. Now this really chimes with meditation because the experience in meditation, as you go deeper in meditation, is that the mind, that the experience becomes simpler and simpler on one hand, but richer and richer and more extravagant on another. My deepest experiences in life have been, in a certain sense, the simplest. Once when I was looking at a painting in the National Gallery, once particularly when I was on a 4-month ordination retreat. You experience that life is actually not to do with you after all. It's not to do with you. You have a role in life, but that role is to open up to consciousness. And consciousness, to use that word, which is clumsy and inaccurate, mind is also a problematic word because it sounds like a thing, and it sounds like yours again. It sounds like an object in a world of objects. It's more like a spirit that animates the world, that creates beauty and order and structure and is going somewhere. Yeah? And one way of thinking about what Buddhism is and what the Buddha is a deep understanding that consciousness isn't owned by me. It's something I can participate in and flourish, but it's not mine. It doesn't pop out of my brain. And the more we think it does, the more unhappy it makes us. It's interesting, I've been saying to friends that, the much vaunted death of God has not been an unqualified success. We've now made me into God, that all meaning and consciousness comes from me. In the past, we thought it all came from God. They're just different metaphors. But turning ourselves into a God has not been successful. We've made ourselves unhappy, addicted, lonely, isolated, and so on. So what Buddhism understands very deeply is that consciousness, whatever that is, it's just a placeholder word really, runs through everything, animates everything in some way that we don't understand, and animates us. Yeah? And we can permit more and more of that. So in deep meditation experiences, but also I think in deep communication. I think that's one of the other places in my life where I experience that most, is in deep friendship and communication. You experience yourself as permitting, don't you, more consciousness. That time you talk to a friend in a cafe, first you're aware of, I fancy that person, the coffee grinder is a bit deafening, it's a bit hot. As you get absorbed in the conversation, the deeper you go, consciousness seems to be permitted more and more, and you start to almost be able to, consciousness seems to run between the two of your minds. You can't decide, is this what I'm thinking or what you're thinking? It's very, very deeply fulfilling. Very, very deeply fulfilling. So to see that what Buddhism or Bhante Sangha actually calls spiritual death is a letting go of a literal, small, self-identified, self-preoccupied me to permit more consciousness. In this schema, your sense of self, my me, is actually getting in the way of life. Yeah? It's not the answer to life, it's usually a kind of restricting factor. Yeah? That the more I let go of me, the more I let go of what I think, what I believe, who I think I am, what I think about this and that, the more I open up to a new kind of consciousness. Yeah? And that new kind of consciousness, which is not separate from me, so if you have an idea that consciousness is separate from me, do you see how you end up with God? Or if you think, oh, it is me, you end up with God as me, which is just as bad, actually, and just as tyrannous to have God as me. There's some other possibility that consciousness goes beyond us, but isn't separate from us, that we live it out at our deepest and best, and it opens us out. So what this next stage is saying is, okay, on the basis of, first of all, really owning yourself. I was talking about exercise. I didn't mention it last week. Greg said, you didn't mention it last week. Is that because you haven't done any? That's quite astute. So I've now done 4 in a row. Thank you. Anyway, that's my streak. All the 4 sessions. So, you start with simple things like being a healthy person, with really living through your body, not in a fetishized way, but in a living way, owning your awareness, owning your agency. Then you start to think, okay, I need to really open my heart. I need to be a source of love and generosity in the world, not just focused on me. All of that is softening me, what I want, what I think, what I want to get, what other people are trying to get from me, what I want to resist from other people, what I want to get from other people, all of which causes us so much pain. In spiritual death, on the basis of integration and positive emotion, you consciously let go of self. Yeah. Traditionally, it's that people talk about no self, which is I find again a bit silly as a form, because it's if you're not careful, you think about no self from a fragmented, distorted, overly cerebral point of view. The Buddha's not interested in that at all. He'd just say, stop that. Get back to do a bit of exercise, meditate, be a bit generous, open up, then we can explore what that means. So it's more that self is a limitation and that there's so much, much more. Now you can only really let go of self to the degree to which you have faith in there being more, but I'll talk about that next week. These 2 weeks sort of go together, because it's very difficult to let go of a sense of self if that feels all you've got. One of the reasons why we can't let go of self is because we don't have any faith of anything beyond that and anything beyond death. So me is all I've got, and all I can do is live as long as possible and stuff in as much pleasure as possible. That's our sort of philosophy. So what I want to do now is we'll do a meditation, and I'll just lead us a little bit into a spiritual death reflection. And then at the end of it, I'm going to read an ancient sutra from a wisdom sutra, which is the quintessence of Buddhist wisdom. It's just to, strikingly for me, one of the things I did before I went back to the funeral, but I wanted to be in my mother's house the night before, and I wanted to walk. I come from a small town, and I just wanted to be, it's like the end of that small town for me. I don't sort of need to go there ever again, and I grew up there, and it's very, how place is so written into your body. I know all the little roads, I know every hill, in a very small area around the town. I wanted to do that, and what I did is I wanted to chant my mantra as I went around, and I did a ritual in my mother's house, and I said the words of this sutra in the house, in my mother's house, and it really made sense, this sutra. Now, it can only make sense in a deep way, not in an intellectual, cognitive way. Don't try and think about it. But if you can be in touch with the great matters of life, it makes all sense, actually. I had this experience of the Heart Sutra, as it's called, making sense. So I thought we'd finish with me reading that, and I'll chant the mantra at the end of it. And then what I suggest is that, again, I'll need to sort of conduct the leaving, but why don't we stay in silence until we get our coat on, just so that we can still stay in touch with that. Because these are great matters. Nobody talks about this sort of stuff. It's really very odd when you think about it. Okay, so let's settle down to meditate. And again, when you're ready, closing your eyes. And you're trying to immediately move out of a certain kind of thought, sort of split off, fragmented thought, into something more like a direct awareness of your body. And again, see if you can soften your face, soften your brow, soften your eyes. Just check if you're gripping with your jaw, See if you can let go of your shoulders. Again, see if you can let go of your belly. So your whole body is calming down, quietening down. And there's more and more of a sense of living through your body. You never want to get too far away from your body. See if you can just tune into your body breathing. And even having a sense of your body, your breath calming your body, unifying your mind and your body together. Calming the body, calming your mind. And then once again, and without making a big deal of it, it's just like reading something or thinking something. Bring to mind an experience, a time in your life that you found moving, that seemed to open you up emotionally. One of the great limitations of our lives is a kind of habitual hard-heartedness. So we can work on that by bringing to mind something that moved us. And then just see if you can sit completely still, touch with your body and your heart, and just listening. The Heart Sutra. The Bodhisattva of compassion, when he meditated deeply, saw the emptiness of all 5 skandhas and sundered the bonds that caused him suffering. Here then, form is no other than emptiness. Emptiness, no other than form. Form is only emptiness. Emptiness, only form. Feeling, thought and choice, consciousness itself are the same as this. All things are by nature void. They are not born or destroyed, nor are they stained or pure, nor do they wax or wane. So, in emptiness, no form, no feeling, thought or choice, nor is there consciousness, no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, no colour, sound, smell, taste, touch, or what the mind takes hold of, nor even act of sensing. No ignorance or end of it, nor all that comes of ignorance. No withering, no death, no end of them. Nor is there pain, or cause of pain, or cease in pain, or noble path to lead from pain. Not even wisdom to attain. Attainment too is emptiness. So know that the Bodhisattva, holding to nothing whatsoever, but dwelling in prajna wisdom, is freed of delusive hindrance, rid of the fear bred by it, and reaches clearest nirvana. All Buddhas of past and present, Buddhas of future time, using this prajna wisdom, come to full and perfect vision. Hear then the great dharani, the radiant, peerless mantra, the prajna paramita, whose words allay all pain. Hear and believe its truth. Gate gate paragate, parasangate bodhiswaha. Gate gate paragate, parasangate bodhiswaha. Gate gate paragate, parasangate bodhiswaha. Okay, so that's all we've got time for today. In fact, I've slightly gone over time. So do make a donation. We're trying to create this little tiny world here based on generosity, not on payment. So the more we can just get donations, then we don't have to think about anyone paying things. That feels right to me. And then let's leave in silence until we put our coats on. And then next week, as I said, I want to come back to what we open up to when we let go of ourselves. Because we won't be able to let go of ourselves unless there's more than ourselves that we can reliably open up to, not just as an idea, not just as a nice idea, but as a real experience. Yeah? And we'll come on to that next week. So let's have this half of the room go first, and let's stay in silence until we put the coats on. Okay, so this side can go.